Greetings from Jung Seed Company. Today we're going to be learning a little bit about garlic, and then we're going to go out to the garden and plant some garlic. First off, there are two kinds of garlic that you can plant. The first kind is called the hardneck garlic, and the second kind is a softneck garlic. The characteristics of hardneck are that they have a flower stalk called a scape that comes up, and the scape is a flowering mechanism and will produce bulbils on the end of it. And if you want extra garlic, you can plant those, but most people will cut them off and use them in flavoring some of their salads or things like that, because they do have that garlicky flavor to them. But if you leave them on, they do reduce the size of the bulbs that you'll be digging in the fall. So most people will cut them off as they see them develop. The softneck garlic does not have a flower scape, so that's the one way that you can tell the difference between them. Some of the advantages of the hardneck garlic is that they're well suited for northern climates. They're very hardy. They store not as well as the softneck, so you maybe get 4 to 6 months of storage out of the hardneck garlics. They do have a more complex flavor, so most people like them better than the softneck, but the softneck work really well in warm climates, and actually you can plant them in the cold climates, but it may take 2 years to get a decent bulb out of them. The other thing with the hardneck is that you'll get larger cloves, but you'll get less of them because they form around the flower stalk. So we have 4 different varieties of hardneck here, and then we also have elephant garlic, which really isn't a garlic, it's a relative of the leek, but we're going to plant that anyway. So, first variety that we have is Chesnik Red, and it's a very good variety. Now what you want to do is you want to break the bulb open, and then you separate the cloves. And what you want to do with the cloves is you want to separate the real little ones from the bigger sized ones, because the bigger ones are the ones that you're going to plant, because they will produce a much nicer size bulb for you in the fall. The little ones you can use in your cooking, or if you're going to plant them, you want to plant them in a separate spot, because they're not going to be as big the first year as the cloves that you plant the big ones. So you want to just break that center section, which was the flower scape, off, and then they're very easy to separate. So that's Chesnik Red. Okay, we're going to switch to another variety called Northern White, and you can see the bulb is very tight, and so what I do is I kind of break off that scape, but they're sometimes hard to get the bulb broken. So what I do is I just take a flat-headed screwdriver and stick it in the middle and kind of break it apart, because once you break it apart, the cloves separate quite easily. And then again, I take the cloves apart, and any of them that are smaller, break the scape off. And any of them that are smaller, I will set aside. Like there's one in the middle here that's kind of small. It's a little bit small. So those we'll use for cooking, but the large ones we'll use for planting. So there's another one. That one broke apart quite easily. And so we'll do the same thing there. We'll separate the cloves. And then we just go right down the line. I've got Music, a variety that's sort of red in the center, and you break it apart. And you separate the good cloves from the small cloves. German Porcelain. And the cloves will vary in size from variety to variety, but as you can see with the hardnecked, there's just one layer of cloves around the scape, and that was the flower stalk from last summer that was cut off. So break those apart. Take the flower scape off. Separate the little ones. Okay, and now I have plastic bags marked with which variety they are. So we'll put them in the individual bags and we'll go out to the garden and get started with the planting. Okay, we're out at the garden now where last night I rototilled the garden. I used a couple bags of manure, composted manure and leaf compost, which I worked into the soil because garlic is a heavy feeder that likes a lot of fertilizer. And so we have here the Chesnik Red, and what I'm going to do is the spacing that we've chosen for our garlic is the rows are about 6 inches apart approximately, and we're going to place the cloves between 4 and 6 inches apart. And like I said, we took the small cloves out, so we're just going to be planting them. What I do is I made a furrow with my hoe. We want to get the cloves about 3 inches deep in the ground for the Hardneck varieties of garlic, and we want to get the elephant garlic, which we'll plant last, probably 4 to 6 inches deep, because that grows a very large stem. It sometimes can get 4 to 5 feet high, and in order for the stem to stand, it has to be that deep. So we take the cloves, and the point at the top of the bulb should be facing up, and the little basal plate, which is where the roots come out, will be placed down. So we just take them and we push them into the soil so that we know they're going to be about 3 inches in the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cloves and spread them here, and then my next step will be to set them up so that they're have the basal plate in the ground. So I just face them down, put them at about 6 inches apart approximately. And it doesn't matter if the husk came off or not, it will be just fine when it's in the ground. So there, now we have the Chesnik Red. I also made stakes. You know, you sometimes think you can remember what variety is what, but I made stakes which I marked on both sides because the stake will stay here and the side that faces the sun will probably bleach out, but the back side will have on it. I also put the date that I planted it. Garlic should be planted after the weather starts to cool off, so anytime from mid-September through the end of October. The quicker you get them in the ground, the faster the roots will start to grow, and actually they'll throw up some greens in most cases in the fall to kind of help get those roots down, especially if you give them enough fertility. Those tops will probably die off in the winter, but then next spring they'll come back to life and they'll grow really, really good. Fertilizing in the fall is much better than fertilizing in the spring. If you're going to fertilize one time, the fall's the time to do it because it gets them off to a good start. Okay, now that I have the first 2 rows of garlic in the ground, I'm going to add a little extra fertilizer because they are heavy feeders, so you just want to put a little bit of fertilizer on the furrow that you're going to be putting back in over the soil, because that will give them that extra fertility that they need to get off to a good start. Any a well-balanced fertilizer will work for this. So now we have the fertilizer on, and we're going to close the first 2 rows up. So we just pull the soil over, one of the things that I'm blessed with here in Randolph, we have a nice deep rich silt loam, which is excellent for growing almost any vegetable. And so by adding that extra compost, adding a little bit of fertilizer to the row that we're planting, this garlic should get off to a good start. And there, almost done. Okay, now we got the first 2 rows in, so I'll kind of smooth the surface out a little bit. And we're off with the first 2 varieties. Okay, next we want to mulch the soil so that the soil stays warm for a longer period of time. So I have some real clean straw that we got off one of our farms, and we're going to cover up those couple rows of garlic with a nice layer of clean straw. Now you want clean straw because if you get the wrong straw and it has weed seed in it, you'll have not only garlic coming up but lots of weeds. And the goal is to keep the soil as warm as possible until the garlic establishes. And so this mulch will stay on. In fact, I will probably leave it on until I dig the garlic next fall, and then we'll just work it into the soil for more organic matter. Okay, so now we got the hay or the straw on the 2 rows that we have planted, and we kind of even it out. You want to have 4 to 6 inches of straw. You want to use something that doesn't mat down when it gets wet, and straw is excellent for that. Marsh hay is excellent. The one thing you really don't want to use as a mulch is leaves, because the leaves will, when they get wet, they compact down and they don't produce any kind of insulation for the ground. So that's how we plant our garlic in the Zonde garden. If you have any further questions, please feel free to send us a request at info@junkseed.com. We'll keep you informed and pictures of how the garlic keeps going in maybe a month or so, and then next spring and through the summer, and then next fall we'll show you the results of our planting the garden. Have a great gardening season. This is Dick Zonde from Junk Seed Company.